Hi, hello everyone. Thank you all to be here today with us. We will be discussing a very interesting topic in insurance about the biggest roadblocks to automation. I'm Gonçalo Queiro. I'm Chief AI Officer at Doc Digitizer. We have with us Guilherme Barreto, that is the VP of Business Development at Automize. And we have very special participation of Ângelo Guerra Vilela, Head of Digital of AGEAs Portugal. Thanks so much to be here with us. And the purpose of this webinar is to discuss how to cope the roadblocks in automation in an industry that is usually very conservative, vis-a-vis what is happening with insurance tech worldwide. Thank you very much, and I pass to Guilherme the word.
Thank you, Gonçalo, for the introduction, and welcome, Gonçalo, Ângelo, to our audience. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you.
Also, I'd like to, before we get started, just for our audience's reference, if you do have any challenges or issues with the sound or the image quality, more often than not, a simple refresh will solve the challenge, or reconnecting, or checking the reconnect box on the top of your screen. We are on Webinar Jam, which is a platform that works better on Chrome. So if you're having any issues, do feel free to try moving on to the Chrome browser. You can also send messages through the chat window. They will be available to the host, and we'll be answering the questions through email. So without further ado, I suggest that we get started. And we are going to be tackling 5 main topics today. We're going to be challenging Ângelo and Gonçalo on these topics, so we have a discussion. The idea, as Gonçalo mentioned, is that we do have a conversation about the 5 main roadblocks to automation in insurance, and hopefully exchange some learnings and thoughts on how to overcome these. So I wanted to start off by, and before posing a question, perhaps by providing some context and background as to where we are and how to introduce this topic of leadership commitment. According to industry research, executives across all industries are classifying technology capabilities as a strategic differentiator. Thinking about this, strategic transformations require great leadership. Transformation is inherently risky, and getting the most from a portfolio of innovation initiatives is more about managing risk than eliminating it. And since no one knows exactly where valuable innovations will emerge, and searching everywhere is impractical, executives must create some boundary conditions for the opportunity spaces they want to explore. This question, both for Ângelo and Gonçalo, is how do you see the path of insurance to change from a risk-averse strategy to an innovation-first mindset?
Gonçalo, would you take the lead?
Yeah, sure. Please do.
Okay, so well, thanks for the introduction and for the invite. I would rather perhaps deconstruct a little bit the title of this seminar, repositioning it not as the 5 biggest roadblocks, but the 5 biggest opportunities towards the industry, financial industry in general, and insurance in particular, considering how innovation stands in the agenda of leaders, and the leaders' wide sense, not only boards and executive committees, but also the complete set of leaders that drive an organization to the future. I would say that leadership commitment is the key transformation pillar to overcome the apparent adversity to risk that characterizes financial industry. Financial industry traditionally has been very relying on technology ever. So what we see from the outside world, or better said, what the outside world sees, is that transformation may not look quick enough. But the fact that it's being done in consistent and small steps, mixing innovation, disruption, and consistency towards the expectation of customers. I'm profoundly optimistic on the way ahead and the way organizations will embrace transformation towards the future. And in fact, the key differentiation pillar is commitment of leadership. So I would not call it a roadblock, but rather more an opportunity.
Angelo, overall in the industry, so not only regarding AGR, how do you see a possible path for fostering that innovation? Is changing current business units? Is some insurers create a new innovation business units? What do you see from leadership and then on the ground, boots on the ground to make that happen? The most viable strategy?
Well, I would say that the way an organization is structured can take, let's put it in time frames, 3 to 6 months to change. A strategy can take 1 year to implement, but a corporate culture can take 5 years to a decade to change. So what will make the difference in the future is the change of culture, and it has to start around the industry. It has already started, but it has to accelerate clearly. I don't speak on behalf of the industry, of course. That's not my mandate, let's say. But as an attentive observer, I would say that cultures are changing. It's heard in the market. Not only in insurance, but also in banking. The load of legacy systems and the way that industry changes slowly, but and I would use on purpose the word roadblock here. The biggest roadblock is not the legacy systems, are not the legacy systems, but the legacy corporate cultures. And the change of leadership cultures is happening. We see it in the industry, some faster, some a little bit slower, but in any case, it's changing. And customers are demanding that, and customers are seeing it perhaps less quick than they would like, but in any case, the change is already happening. I'm profoundly optimistic about it.
Okay, Jeremy, should we change the topic to talent?
Yeah, I think this is very inherently related to the second topic, and you mentioned there's also an important note that you mentioned during your answer, which was about the apparent risk to adversity in insurance, how this also is tied to a mandatory mission to change, to adapt, to innovate in terms of company culture and organizational culture. And that is tied very much closely to people, skills, talent, which is an important topic surrounding the innovation mindset. I'm also keen on hearing your thoughts on this topic, because I know that you have put together some thoughts on this.
One thing that we are seeing is that some roadblocks or not taking care of opportunities, as was referring to, is that the other side that is not so much used to innovation still is not comfortable enough to make these experiments, because experiments, as we know, may fail. Okay, so this shortage of talent in these other areas with a mindset that is used to trial and fail fast and repeat the process until we actually get it right, is something that we should look out for. Do you agree, Guillermo, on this?
Just taking down some notes so that, I would say I'm much more optimistic than the picture you're painting, Gonçalo, and fortunately we not agree in everything, so which makes this seminar much more lively. I would say that are a certain amount of let's call it urban myths about insurance and the financial industry as a whole. One is risk adversity, and the other one is about the shortage of talent and the apparent resistance to innovation. I think from what I see in the industry, especially in the recent past, that is more a thing of that is crystallized in the mentality of the market, in the way the market looks at the financial industry, more than an actual reality. There's no risk adversity in insurance and banking, because taking risk is our core business, both in insurance and banking. Consistency towards the way we take risk is the secret for resilience. I think is in fact the shortage of talent. Gonçalo is absolutely right. That trend is reaching the Portuguese market. But not all organizations suffer from the same shortage of talent. That depends on the corporate attractiveness of the organization. In our case, that at Ageas Portugal, it's not something we can complain about. We are a very attractive workplace, and we have partnerships in place with universities like Nova SBE, for instance. And the attractiveness of our value proposition makes that we are in fact privileged not to suffer with shortage of talent.
Mm-hmm. Actually, this ties to the next question that I've also, or the next topic that I think is worth us spending some time on, which is very much, I think, the base of the adoption of any digital strategy, which is IT teams, IT systems, and the mandate of IT teams. You know, the perception from outside the industry, I'm not sure if you agree, Gonçalo, but the perception from outside, in multiple occasions, I've had the chance to have a conversation with people across all kinds of industries and verticals, is that, in a way, there are information silos between different business units, and often IT and legacy IT platforms and systems represent a barrier to digital transformation or automation, because IT departments are often mandated with a mission to develop internal solutions or platforms, and their focus is mostly on ensuring continuity of the existing systems and platforms. However, the pace of technological innovation is continuously accelerating, and most IT teams do not necessarily possess the resources or the interest, in that case, to develop proprietary technology to keep up with the rhythm of transformation and digital adoption. I think you're going to have a strong opinion on this one, but you know, is in insurance, is IT well behind other industries, and you know, is it the most often justification for delays in the innovation strategy? Is it a valid reason? Is this a thing, or do you have another opinion? Do you see this differently, and the outside perception might not be aligned with the truth?
Well, I think it's a mix. It's very interesting when Angelo said that you need a decade to change a culture in a company. But actually, there are IT systems that are deployed in insurance companies for more than 3 or 4 decades. They are the same, and we saw in pandemic on a completely different industry, but there was a region that wanted to make a change in payroll, HR, and systems, and they understood that were written in COBOL, and there was no anyone that was able to make the change. Those guys were already retired. Okay, so this happens usually in situations where the concepts are very stable. And I believe the insurance industry is one of the oldest industries in the world. It goes back to shipments.
16th century, from the 16th century.
So it started when you had to insure the boat with the cargo that was going across the oceans. So when the concepts become very stable and very mature, what happens is that the systems also become very stable and very mature because the concept itself is very stable. Now, what happens is that even with a very stable concept, but when the ecosystem changes, then you need to reconnect the systems. But historically, because the system was stable, you have an information silo, you have an application silo, you have an application that works very well on its own. Now, with the advent of the internet and then everything that come after it, the internet commerce, payments, logistics, and so forth. Now you want to connect all those systems, but those systems were not built to be connected. And second, the people that actually build the systems are not around anymore easily. So you have to change everything. So I believe that no one is to blame. It's just a matter of fact. Okay, things become stable, and now you have actually to open those systems. It's not easy. So the best way is to deploy another system, but you have huge insurance companies that must continue to work very stable because they are actually managing our risks. So on that front, they must not fail. So this is kind of rebuilding a building that is already done.
Well, to a certain point, what you say is undisputable. But again, I'm much more optimistic than you, Gonçalo, at least
I'm not pessimistic. I'm not. Actually, I'm very optimistic. I'm just stating that the speed of transformation is not as fast because there are some things that are already present in our reality. Just
there's the heritage.
Okay. Well, you touched a lot of very interesting topics. I think we could hold a 1-hour seminar just commenting on what you said, Gonçalo. But let me just challenge a little bit your thoughts on a couple of things. Well, and I wouldn't like to quote myself, but again, I think legacy systems are not the biggest barrier to innovation. It's much more legacy management cultures than legacy systems. On one way, and I don't think, at least from my professional experience, that IT people in general delay innovation because running the business smoothly as it has always been, it's the secure place to be, and innovation is delayed because of IT people. On the contrary, that's not at least the case I've been experienced in the organization I work for. I would not disclose any figure, but the proportion of change the business investments or spending, the way depends on the way we look at it, versus run the business, which is the stability part, is I would say from 1 to 4 or 1 to 5. So we invest 4 to 5 more times more in changing the business than in running the business. So the stability we have in our systems is not a roadblock for innovation. On the contrary, the secret, and I'll make this perhaps the change to what Gonçalo was saying, is that depends, and I'm not a specialist in architecture, but depends on the way you master your architecture. So the stability of core systems is an asset, but if you layer it well and you master the architecture and expose the organization to the outside world correctly, IT systems or the existing systems are not a barrier to innovation. So bottom line, depends on the way on where we put the money. If you put the money where our mouth is, what we invest on change the business much higher than when we put on run the business. And legacy systems, if correctly layered, and if we master the architecture, are not a barrier to innovation. In fact, in certain organizations, it happens, as Gonçalo is saying. Perhaps numbers are numbers. Perhaps in the vast majority, I don't have figures. I don't know if there are any at all. But in any case, I think mastering the architecture and putting the money where the mouth is is the enabler for innovation and transformation, and not resistance. So it's not IT people, it's not IT systems. It's much more management culture and putting innovation at the core of the strategy.
So a provocative question here.
Please do.
Why do we have to wait for companies like Revolut or Lemonade to appear in order for a number of organizations actually tackle that? So why only after Lemonade start appearing a number of apps and interfaces that actually allow us to have a more immediate and simple relationship with insurers?
Well, I hate to quote Steve Jobs, because everybody quotes Steve Jobs, especially on what he didn't say ever. But I would say that sometimes you have to present a customer something you didn't ask for the customer to realize what he wanted to have. So despite all the customer intimacy the industry has, Lemonades of this world had to appear for the customers to understand what they really needed or what they really wanted. Well, but at least so far, just to complete the reasoning, the Lemonades and the Revoluts of this world are also taking and learning, are taking a lot of risks. This is a risk-taking industry, and so far not making money at all. I'm not disregarding. I'm saying that of course they need to appear. They are drivers of the acceleration of change in the industry. But in fact, sometimes you need to present the market something the market wasn't expecting, for the market to understand that was the need. And that has nothing to do with legacy systems and the burdens of legacy, or the burden of legacy, or anything. It's just sometimes brilliant ideas appear, and they are an industry changer.
But during the conversation, you mentioned also one thing, which was the fact that incumbents have a lot more to lose than a new entrant in the market. How is this? Would you say that there could be two ends to innovation, or two definitions to innovation that have different implications? Often we hear, for an organization like a startup, a new entrant in the market, innovation is disruption. It's starting from scratch and normally changing a business or operating model completely, or anything close to that. Whereas from the outside, at times it feels like, for an incumbent, and I'm not being too specific about the insurance, I'm being generalistic about this definition, it feels like the definition of innovation is closer to what perhaps I would define as optimization. And where optimization is, yes, changing the business, and you mentioned that Ageas specifically invests a lot more in changing the business than maintaining the business, but it's more of a incremental improvement approach rather than a disruptive approach. How do you feel about these two definitions? Would you say that in the insurance industry, there is, you've felt, and can you think of examples where you see these two definitions being very clear and different organizations moving along a strategy of optimization versus innovation? And are they compatible? Are they friends? Are they enemies? Are they, can they actually coexist? What's your general feeling on this? And I'm thinking about Angelo, but also Gonçalo, because I know that you also, not only within the financial industry, but also outside the financial industry, we've had the chance to discuss this, and I have a strong opinion on this.
Well, I don't know if Gustavo wants to, Gonçalo wants to start first, or comment, just change it a little bit.
There is a fine line between this might not seem easy to understand, but sometimes there is a fine line between optimization and disruption. Okay, so sometimes what happens is that when you are running some optimization process, you come across with a new way to do things, or technology or whatever. And then afterwards, you just realize that you can actually take that technology or new approach and completely change the business. Okay, and I believe that we at Dot Digitizer and you at Automind, so we are pieces of Lego, pieces of a larger puzzle. But then when they see our puzzles, then start thinking, well, I can actually apply this piece of the puzzle to a number of other scenarios. And then it's not a simple optimization, it's a radical transformation in the way you do business. So I think, and if we go to other industries like, and now currently everyone is moving to electric cars, but this kind of shifts starts with a small test, a small optimization, and then scales. The difficult part is to not be comfortable only with optimization. I think that is the secret sauce when you go with radical transformation. What you have, what you say, Arthur?
Well,
different.
And
perhaps,
before going into the details of your answer, perhaps just grabbing one thing that you said, Gonçalo, perhaps that's it. Perhaps optimization is a short-term, a near-term focused initiative or strategy, whilst disruption and innovation is more of a longer-term, broader and longer-term concept that needs to be clear in the foundations and the strategy of the organization.
It's you can see even the optimization like a beta testing. Okay, you are testing something out with less risk. It's short term. You have quick wins, so you can compact time in the optimization strategy. But eventually, optimization will hit a wall.
Okay, I tend to agree globally with the way Gonçalo put it. Let me just put it a little, perhaps more simplify it a little bit, and saying that one thing is the right blend between incremental change and disruptive change, having the right blend in the industry, and the other thing is the perception of the industry. Getting back to other industries, so not taking the Revolut example. Imagine, or let's take Revolut. Imagine that what Revolut in the financial industry is doing, or Lemonade, was done by an incumbent player. Would that get the same share of attention? When you have a portfolio that is profitable, and that's where the investors in the market are looking at. So it would be if Lemonade was a department of one of the biggest insurance companies in the world, or a spin-off or something, and was doing exactly the same, would it get the same share of attention and that it has from the market? It would probably have the same adoption. And the adoption of Lemonade, at least from the latest figures, is equivalent to some quarters of New York. So it's not a massive global player. It's small, growing of course fast, but would it get the same share of attention from one side? So what can and that has been the topic around this discussion. What can incumbents do? Well, they can do the same as disruptors do. Incremental innovation to a point where they have to disrupt, and the disruption should come from the inside. So mixing incremental innovation or optimization, as Gonçalo said, with disruptive innovation, and to a point that you cannot incrementally change anymore, and we have to disrupt. But it will always start as a small part of the portfolio with little attention and market share, little market attention, little market share, and little revenue share, until a point where you disrupt, and there's a resistant curve, and then the adoption becomes exponential, and that becomes the new start, the new standard. So what's important to be there, and I get back to the same point, is that if an innovation culture is part of a corporate DNA, it's much easier than if it is not. Right blend and perception are what we should focus on when we look at incumbents.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. And experimenting, trying, testing is a key component to that. But in that sense, also
failing, and learning that failure is part of life.
Which brings me to the next point, which is exactly that. Research shows that 70% of complex or large-scale change programs don't reach their stated goals. And common pitfalls include the lack of employee engagement or inadequate management support, poor or non-existent cross-functional collaboration, and the lack of accountability. And furthermore, sustaining a transformation and its impact typically requires a major reset in mindsets and behaviors, something that a few leaders know how to achieve. It's easy to set digital transformation goals, but hitting the right goals that deliver value at a shareholder level is a challenge that not all executives are equipped to endure. I think we can also talk about what the right framework is to set the right goals and to foster an innovation culture. But ultimately, do you think that what's the role of failure and unsuccessful experiences in fostering innovation and disrupting business and operational models? How do you feel about that? And to what extent is the insurance industry a victim of unsuccessful transformation experiences, even if these happen with organizations in industries other than insurance?
Well, figures are what they are. If the figures you've stated, that a huge part of transformation fails, well, these are facts of life. I will not challenge. Let's look at the other way around. If it is part of culture, if failing is part of culture, depends on the size of your failure. So don't fail big. That wouldn't be good. But I remember in my early working days in the industry, hearing towards a very large audience in the center of Portugal, a very large audience, an ExCo member saying that I deal very well with failure, but just don't make twice the same mistake. And that was a very important insight, as I was very young and recent in the organization. that shows a corporate mentality towards experiment. Don't be afraid of failing. Try not to fail. Don't do twice the same mistake, but failure is part of trying. And that comes with corporate culture. Some projects of transformation fail because, as you said, of lack of management alignment, clear goals, lack of project management qualities or culture. But I think that is changing. That has been changing recently, and that as long as you embed into a corporate culture that failing is part of growing, well, when we are children, we and for some reason we don't get bruised when we are children, and we just go to the ground and smash ourselves, and it happens with all of so failing and having obstacles on the way is part of a growth process. If we consider as organizations that we are always growing, we should be always growing, failure is part of it. But of course, increasing corporate alignment and the objectivity towards goals and the final purpose of transformation, it's key to success. So if we see the purpose and not the process, it's much easier to succeed in transformation than focusing on the process, the obstacles, and the gain and lost ground in the corporate battlefield. Let's look at the purpose. Let's look at the point on the horizon and aim at it, and be consistent, assuming that failure is part of the way.
I guess that also ties to what we were discussing initially. It's about managing the risk, not avoiding it, not taking it fully blindly, but also managing the risk and taking pondered decisions on how to approach innovation and failure.
And don't persist on the mistake, on the error. If we know we're not heading to the right place, just change the way, but have a purpose, have a point on the horizon. Aim at that point. The route to get there is not always the same, and it's changing. It's bumpy, but if we have a purpose and we know where we want to go, success will come naturally, despite the failures on the way.
Yeah. Which ties to I think there's a bit of there's a clear tie between all the topics that we mentioned, which is, and in my opinion, the number one topic being the leadership commitment, being a key pillar in all the other, or solving all the other potential roadblocks that come up in innovation, transformation, and automation initiatives. The fact that, and you mentioned, it is obviously essential that leadership is aligned and committed to innovating, automating, transforming, because that enables the whole organization to move forward with a purpose, as you mentioned, in a clear direction, and to be able to cope with failure, with unsuccessful implementations, experimentations. And the fact that there is a clear, and when this mandate exists, the organization is aligned and growing in the same direction. And how, as of today, and where we are, and where the insurance industry is also thinking about the case of Ageas, how, as of today, an organization like Ageas is already investing 3, 4, 5 times more in disrupting or changing or innovating the business.
In changing than in continuity.
Exactly, rather than continuity, which is, I think it also points how clear it is and has become for an organization that is well established in the industry, such as Ageas, to cope with new entrants and the pace of digital disruption that is happening. And the role of, what we've seen, I think also demystified, is what we've seen from the outside, and what we outsiders see is that, or perceive, is that the IT and the legacy systems are oftentimes a roadblock to innovation. It's curious to see how you have a different perspective on that, and perhaps one of the learnings we can take out of that is precisely we need to set the right framework to experiment within, let's say, a sandbox, which is a controlled environment and has limited risks for the lights on and the day-to-day of the business. But rather, what I found interesting, and you mentioned throughout the whole conversation, is how culture is an essential pillar, and the shift in culture is one of the aspects that most influences the success and of digital transformation, automation, and digital adoption, and the change and shift of mindset, business, and operational models, and how important it is that we need to tackle still, and insurance organizations in general still need to tackle the pillar of cultural change and adoption.
Yeah, I think, well, that was the perfect summary. I would just like this slide, rather like this slide to be editable so that we put opportunities instead of roadblocks, but I think we are completely on the same page. I think when a culture is innovation prone, the future is guaranteed. So if we not concentrate on technology for technology, innovation for the sake of innovation, if we have embedding into our corporate mindset that innovation must be there, and that's of course part of a corporate culture. We experience a lot in the group I work for, in Ageas Portugal and Ageas globally as a group. If innovation is embedded into our culture, it will happen naturally.
Perfect. Angelo, Gonçalo, we are arriving at the end of our time and webinar today. This has been a phenomenal conversation. I have really enjoyed the time we've spent together. It has been great to hear your thoughts from an industry insider perspective on where we're at and what other organizations and other senior leaders can do and the paths they can follow to ensuring success in this road of uncertainty, or at least improving the chances of success. I would also say, and I would invite our audience, if you do have any questions for Angelo, Gonçalo, or myself about Ageas, Doc Digitizer, Automaze, and do feel free to reach out to us. We'll be sharing our contacts with you. And we're looking forward also to hearing your questions, and we'll get back to you on those. Thank you so much for your time today, Angelo, Gonçalo.
Thank you.
It's been a real pleasure, and I hope we are able to organize another one of these sessions at some stage. And looking forward to the next one. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you
thank you
very much. See you.